Hello, and welcome to another in my series of interviews where I talk to one of our many global UX research practitioners from around the world. My name's Paul Blunden, and I'm founder of UX247, and we help global brands, product owners, UX researchers to make their products perform better by being more customer-centric. Anyway, let's see who our guest is today. So, hello, and thank you for giving up your time to speak with me today. Can I start by asking you to introduce yourself? What's your name and whereabouts are you located?
No problem. And thanks for having me, Paul. My name is Dan Sorvik. I work as a UX researcher and I'm based in Sydney, Australia.
Okay. And how long have you lived in Sydney?
I've been in Sydney for about 6 years now. I've been here for 11 years. I was about 6 years in London before that. And prior to that, I kind of grew up and was raised and went to college in Minnesota in the USA.
Right. Okay. So pretty well traveled.
Yeah, covering all the English speaking spots, I suppose.
Right. Okay. Well, that leads me to my next question, actually, because a lot of our researchers are multilingual, particularly the ones who live in Europe and travel around. Do you have any languages in addition to English?
A little bit of Spanish, but no, I just speak English. But my background is actually in technical writing, so I like to think that I'm a bit of a translator, but of just one language. But no, just English.
Right. Okay. And how did you get into UX research?
Through my degree, we had a usability lab on campus, and I was an intern there. I turned a 6-month internship into 20 months. Absolutely loved it. We also did some accessibility work, some eye tracking work. And yeah, that probably gave me the foundation where I could start as a junior researcher.
Fantastic. And do you have a favorite methodology?
Currently, I do a lot of eye tracking myself. It's pretty niche, but I've been doing it for my whole career, 18 years. And that's definitely my favorite. I find that it is incredibly point of view. You understand kind of the information that's going into someone's mind, and you can use that to elicit, various kind of hypotheses and understanding of the way people are getting through somewhere. That was put on the shelf during COVID, so I did a lot of remote research. That's probably kind of my more mainstay during that time, but I'm always open to learning a new one as well.
I find eye tracking fascinating. Never get to do enough of it, really. Do you find your customers asking you for it, or is it something you're also recommending?
It depends on the type of customer. As a contractor, I get lots of different types of work. Working with UX247, it's more UX research, which is my kind of bread and butter. But on the other kind of, I guess, on the side, I am known as an eye tracking kind of geek or guru. I don't know. I've been doing it so long. So yeah, I've got a few sets of glasses, and I tend to partner with other people to provide that tool and kind of give them the insight and then let them take that forward. But yeah, a lot of people do come to me for that type of work, but it's because I've been doing it so long.
Cool. Yeah, well, it's something I know you for as well, Dan, actually, before we even met on this. Cool. And the sort of sectors you work in, is it a lot of e-commerce, finance? What are the sectors that you've worked across?
Well, in the time I was in London, it was financial services mainly. But since moving out to Australia, I started with a lot of financial services and telecoms. But as I've been doing more and more eye tracking, I'm finding myself doing wholly different types of research. So shopper work or advertising or wayfinding. So I'm able to dabble into those new areas of research and try to build bridges in that way. But in terms of UX, I think here in Australia, there's not as big of a pool. So I do tend to find myself being a jack of all trades in terms of what types of sectors I work in. And someone who's had, nearly 2 decades of experience, I find myself pretty easy to drop into any particular type of work. From your main telecoms to I was doing something for electricity sustainability and ratings. It was highly technical, working with their kind of advisors, but that was something that I could really sink my teeth into and try to learn, and it was a challenge. So no particular sectors at the moment.
Yeah, I always found with research, the broader you are with sectors, the better it is, because there's so many cross fertilization of learnings. It's really useful.
Absolutely. And doing something like a competitive review, even then, I'm like, let's not just take our competitors. Let's go to like examples that are global and different, and something that's totally new, like might not even be a competitor, but it's a similar type of service. And I think that's where you generate the most kind of insight. So yeah, I think you're totally right. The broader experience you have, the more you can draw from.
Yeah, and that's interesting what you say. I mean, it leads nicely to my next question about sort of market maturity in Australia, because you talked then about sort of even with competitor reviews, maybe looking further afield. Can you talk a bit about sort of the maturity, customer centricity of the Australian market?
I find that with a lot of places, customer centricity is there. They talk about it. It's up in posters, put customers first. But in practice, I don't really see it. I think it's broadly lip service. When you dig into the conversations and the actual business objectives, it tends to be about conversion or the bottom line. There are some rare occasions where companies can break through this if they've got the right people at kind of senior level or the right people really championing it. And I think when that does happen, it comes through in the products. You see it in the ratings in the App Store or in just how people introduce the product. So I think in terms of the major brands, I think it's lip service. And here in Australia, I think that's the case as well as most places in the world.
Right. And so I'm getting a sense from you there that it's in an organization, it's often about an individual driving it or a team driving it rather than a culture.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Whoever's kind of leading the research or leading the product. I've worked with some amazing product owners who have the true ability to balance business and the end user. I think they definitely exist. Hopefully we can push that a bit more.
Yeah, it would be nice if there was more of them, but anyway, we've got to start somewhere.
Yep.
So in terms of sort of the greatest challenge for brands like these and product directors when they're thinking about doing research, what do you think those sort of challenges are for them?
I reckon it comes down to time, just how much time they actually have. When I speak to my stakeholders and I say, here are the interviews we're going to do, here's the times, I really give them the challenge to listen to at least 2 interviews. I don't think you can start to empathize with users unless you sit down for a full 2 sessions. So that's something I think is a challenge, especially if you've got a lot of stakeholders and they're distributed around the world. Getting that time to say, all right, actually, I'm going to park everything else and just listen to this hour session. That's a luxury that not a lot of people have. But it's something I try to push because I think in 2 hours, that's what's going to start to build user empathy.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's funny, I was having exactly the conversation with a client yesterday about what was going to happen with the videos after the sessions. Would anybody actually watch them? Yeah. And the summary was no, nobody was going to watch them. And really, we were trying to get them into the sessions for exactly that reason. But
something else
that's
I do try to flag, like, here are the best 2 sessions to watch back. And I'll say, respondent 3 and respondent 5. You've got to listen to those 2. They might be a bit different, but, they were maybe articulate or, highlighted certain things. I think that's one way you can try to shortcut that. So it's not a luck of the draw. You might have someone who's just kind of really represents the broader sample that you're using. So maybe that's a way to kind of encourage it to say, we're not going to send you all of them, but here's these 2. You should really carve out some time to watch those.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. I know a lot of people still ask for clips as well, or clip show reels, which I think are quite good, but I sometimes can lack context. But I think those one or two representative ones, that's a really great idea.
Yeah,
Good stuff.
that's the true voice of customer, isn't it?
Well, it is. Yeah, it absolutely is. So I've been asking everybody in these interviews about the sort of behaviors that are unique to the market. Really interested in your view, even if there aren't any, not least because having been in the US, the UK and Australia, you've got a really interesting perspective. So are there any sort of unique behaviors?
Yeah, and again, maybe this is just my I can't really speak for the masses, but what I've noticed is that Australia is usually a little bit slow on things. Like we're usually a little bit far behind, but with digital transformation, that's actually been a blessing in disguise. In the last kind of 5, 10 years, Australia's been able to really flip it around and take on digital services from the government and contactless payments and all of these like really kind of useful technology, like technological tools. And I think part of it's because we don't have a legacy baseline that we're building on. We kind of missed the boat there. So then all of a sudden we're like, let's start from scratch. And I think there is a bit of excitement. I've noticed just a few things, and contactless payments, I think, is a really good example of that, even though that's now been around for a while. But I am seeing that when I go back to the US anyway, sometimes things feel really antiquated, and I'm like, wow, Australia actually pulled that out of the bag within a couple of years. So there are some examples where we're very far behind, but sometimes that can be a blessing.
And so do I take it there, the digital adoption therefore is sort of quite high in Australia, and so maturity around individuals and their embracing of digital is quite high?
I like to think so, but I may live in a Sydney bubble. Again, I can't speak for the greater Australia, but yeah, generally speaking, we have seen pretty good adoption and things picking up really fast. And I think that is it is a weird thing, and we just seem to be a little bit ahead of the curve there. One thing is shipping, though. That's definitely still very slow. So anytime you're trying to send something, I get so many Christmas cards in January and like even late January. Yeah, shipping is very different, very different. So there's kind of an infrastructure issue that's happening there.
Okay, we're kind of everything. Cool. So final couple of questions for you, Dan. What inspires you, or what's inspiring you at the moment?
Like I think the last few months, I've been doing a bit more travel, and not just because things are finally open again, but because I want to see other places and other things. And that's historically always been something I've loved to do. And I think as a UX researcher, you have that ability to just absorb what's around you and not really come to conclusions, but try to live in a space. So I think there's like this anthropologist in me that's always going to be there, and being able to travel and get out there and see more. I've got a few trips coming up. That gives me energy. That gives me joy.
Fantastic. And finally, what's your biggest learning since you became a researcher?
Learning as a researcher, it goes way back. It's actually something I learned probably in the first couple months of working in London as a junior. And this came from Sarah Duddle, actually, if anyone knows her. But it was just to enjoy the silence, to like take a moment and let the user do and be and kind of come to a conclusion. It's really hard to sometimes say, what are you thinking? What are you doing? Tell me everything. But you actually get more value in observing and letting them come to a natural conclusion. And that's definitely a style of mine. And some of my stakeholders are like, what's going on? I want more words, but it's really about experiencing it, with your participant. So a little bit of quiet time and lulls in the conversation are important, and they're more representative of actual life and actual usage. So there's a time where you can enjoy the silence.
That's a wonderful learning, and I love working with Sarah Duddle. I know her very well, and I can see why she would be inspiring in of herself, but great learning from her as well. Dan, thanks so much for sparing the time to speak to me. It's been fascinating hearing about your history and your work and life in Australia. I'm sure the people watching the video are going to be really interested to hear it too. So thanks very much, and for giving up your time.
Absolutely. Yeah, feel free to hit me up on LinkedIn or whatever. But Paul, it's great working with you and the team as well, and I look forward to our next few projects.
Likewise. Cheers.
All right, thanks.
Well, I hope you enjoyed finding out more about Australia from Dan. I found that fascinating, particularly his perspective, having lived in the US, UK, and Australia. And the eye tracking work he does is fascinating, and feel free to get in touch if you want to find out more about it. I'm Paul Blunden, founder of UX247. If you want to find out more about what we do, visit our website, ux247.com, or find me on LinkedIn. And of course, subscribe to this channel, and there'll be more videos coming along soon. Thanks very much for watching.